Karine, you said to Peter that the president wants to see Roe restored. It's still not clear to me, though, if he supports the late-term abortion restrictions that were included in Roe.
Well, if it's in Roe, then that's what he wants to see.
Now, that is a fantastic question by the reporter of EWTN, Eternal World Television Network. It's a Catholic network worldwide. And he asked very sincere and very thorough questions about Roe v. Wade. If you didn't hear it because he was off mic, you keep saying that President Biden wants Roe v. Wade restored, but you've never said whether that includes the partial birth, late term, right up until the moment of birth kind of abortions that seem to be very popular amongst Democrat politicians. By the way, before you see Karine Jean-Pierre continue with this exchange and this incoherent answer that only shows that she actually doesn't know what Roe v. Wade says, I want you to remember something. It's critically important. Our president, Joe Biden, is a very devout Catholic who takes his faith and the doctrine of the church very seriously. All right, good. I got that out. Here's Karine Jean-Pierre now.
Karine, you said to Peter that the president wants to see Roe restored. It's still not clear to me, though, if he supports the late-term abortion restrictions that were included in Roe.
Well, if it's in Roe, then that's what he wants to see. I'm just not going to get into it. It's whatever.
If it's in Roe. Now, this is a very important moment, and thank you for the reporter from EWTN. What's his name? Kevin, do you know this reporter? He's a good guy, right? From EWTN. Because it's critically important. People forget this, that the original Roe v. Wade decision actually did include third trimester abortion. It had language about viability. And of course, these days, viability means like 22 weeks, which is only halfway through the term, but certainly not in the third trimester. But at the time, do you got the reporter's name for me, Kev?
Toby Capion from EWTN.
Toby Capion. He is a good guy and really sincere. Generally ask questions that his audience want to hear answers to. That has to do with Roe v. Wade and abortion and things like that. And he lays out, he's like, listen, you say you want Roe v. Wade restored. Well, you know, recent legislation and things that are being pushed by Democrats in certain states, like Ralph Northam and the Democrats in Virginia, Andrew Cuomo when he was governor of New York, Gavin Newsom certainly in California, they're going well beyond Roe v. Wade's viability language and pushing for abortions right up until the moment of birth. So where is the president on that? And the only thing Karine Jean-Pierre can say is, well, I mean, if it's in Roe, that's what he's for. We don't know exactly the details. All we know is it sounds really good when we market tested the message, restore Roe. Because guess what? The American people don't even know what Roe is. But now it goes on. It's great.
Is in Roe what Roe was when it was a constitutional law. That's what the president wants to see restored. He's been very clear about that.
He also said he wants to be a president for all Americans, but how in this situation with this issue does he best represent the pro-life Americans who want to see more unborn babies saved?
By the way, I would also follow up if I were him, like pro-life Americans, you know, like he claims he is, because he's a Catholic. You know, people who think that abortion is evil, like Joe Biden, right? Doesn't he think that? Because he's a Catholic, he keeps telling us that. But this is a great question. He keeps saying he wants to unify us, and he wants to be the president of all the people. Well, how exactly do pro-life Americans fit into that equation?
What I will say is majority of Americans wants to see their rights protected.
Oh, so it's not all Americans, it's the majority of Americans. So it's really, he just wants to be the president for the Americans who vote for him, is what you're saying. And this whole idea of their rights protected. You know, all the polls that you see about abortion really do depend on the way the question is asked. And I assure you, if you look at the polls right now and ask the question, do you support legalizing abortion right up until the moment of birth? I'm pretty sure the majority of Americans would say no to that. In fact, I'm quite sure. In fact, the majority of Americans welcome a ban on abortion from about 15 weeks on, which would put us in line with most Western European countries. That's right. The majority of Americans support banning abortion past 15 weeks. Now, personally, I would much rather see it eliminated completely. But if the whole point here is to say we want to be in line with the majority of Americans, she's lying right now. But I guess you're used to that.
wants to see women have their rights protected, wants want women to be able to make those deeply, deeply personal decisions on their bodies, on their own, not politicians. That's what majority of Americans want to see.
By the way, if I were in the room and I was following up and say, you always say that this is a deeply, deeply personal decision, and it can be a tragic decision, the one to choose an abortion. Can I just explain to me, why exactly is this so personal and tragic? Why? I mean, what's involved here that makes it so sensitive? Please, in your own words, tell me. Because they don't want to talk about that, ever. They want to use words like reproductive freedom, which is pretty hilarious because as a Catholic, a pro-life person, I want people to be free to reproduce. In fact, we're not reproducing enough. Let's start cranking out those babies, people. So to say that this is fighting for reproductive freedom, it's actually the opposite. But that's why they use euphemisms: reproductive freedom, women's health choices, protecting your civil rights. Right. Okay, fine. But you just opened the door to the idea that this is a very deeply personal decision. Why? Why is this any different than getting a tooth pulled? Please tell me. I'd love to hear that answer. I really would.
And so the president's going to stand with the majority of Americans on this issue.
Do those unborn babies have any rights then?
I'm not going to get into that question. I've been very, very clear about this, where majority of Americans stand. And that's what matters. But the president wants to see Roe become the law.
Yeah, she's going to keep repeating the same thing. But look at the disdain. Look at that. Oh, I froze it perfectly. Look at the disdain on her face. This is something that is very rarely asked at a White House press briefing. What about the rights of those unborn babies? Look at her reaction. Look at that. And real fast here, there also was testimony, I believe, in the state of Michigan, with regard to, this is an OBGYN student who was asked, because you hear it all the time from Karine Jean-Pierre, from Jen Psaki, from Kamala Harris, from Elizabeth Warren, from various Democrats in leadership. They always say there is not one person out there who wants abortion to be legal up until the point of birth. Gavin Newsom said it during his debate with Ron DeSantis, even though literally that's the law that he's supporting in California. That's literally the law that was passed in New York when Andrew Cuomo was the governor. Remember when they turned the Albany Capitol pink? That's the law in Maryland right now. They tried to push that law through in Virginia. They literally do, in fact, keep passing laws that would allow for abortion up until the point of birth. But you'll hear it from media personalities, from Democrats, but I repeat myself, no one wants abortion up until the moment of birth. Well, here's an OBGYN student who's in the middle of medical school right now, learning exactly the right way to kill a baby.
I think abortion should be unrestricted. And I think when somebody finds out in pregnancy, when or how far along that they are, when someone finds out, they should be able to get an abortion if they want to. And for some people, that is full term. If I can't get abortion training here, if I can't perform abortions in my career, I will not stay in Wisconsin. And a lot of my colleagues who are on the same track agree.
All right, thank you. That'll do nothing to help our shortages.
Oh, it'll be nothing to help our shortages. Let me just tell you something, Wisconsin. If that's the new crop of OBGYN doctors coming through your system right now, you're better off with her going to another state. That is blood-curdling what you just heard. And so don't believe these people who tell you no one really wants abortion on demand. Nobody really wants abortion right up until the date of birth or even in the third trimester. Nobody really wants that. Just ask, if somebody tells you that, just ask them a follow-up question. If it's happening on your Facebook page or in the comments section of YouTube or something, just ask a simple question. Really, what restrictions on abortion do you support? And I guarantee you the answer, if they're being honest, will always be, well, I just don't think rights should be infringed. I think a woman should have the right to reproductive health. They'll go back to the euphemisms. But you just try to get them to articulate one restriction on abortion, and they won't do it. They can't do it. They can't do it.